What is happening out there, rotoscouts basketball fans? Yeah, Steven Leibowitz nails it in the chat. We can't start without Cujo. Just gonna have to sit here and just stare quietly at the camera until Cujo Blue gets here. All right, that's enough of that. Hopefully Cujo shows up to say hi to everybody. He's usually the first one in the door, maybe a little otherwise occupied on a Monday, but we got to get rolling. We've got a lot to talk about. Big, ugly, messy Monday slate. Probably the worst slate of the year already. And yeah, we're going to have to go through this entire thing. 9 games on deck. Both sites leaving off the 10 o'clock games, running through the 9 o'clocks, fortunately. Just saves us a little bit of disaster. But we've got so many guys already missing. Handful of key guys, questionable. Lot to go through. There's Cujo. Welcome, buddy. Good to see you. Steven's here. Cujo's here. So, as I was saying in the Discord, ranting a little bit, we have 2 games out of the 9 with less than a 10-point spread. One of them is a 6.5-point game. One of them's an 8.5-point game. And then there are 7 games with a 10-point spread or greater on top of all the mess. So, it just seems like the NBA schedules were like, watching March Madness, figuring that this would be that time of year. And they're just, oh, you guys like underdogs, huh? Let's show you what happens with real underdogs. We're going to get some teams get completely lit up tonight. So it's really ugly out there. Let me just read this real quick. All right. Anthony Taylor walked in the door. What's up, Ant? Good to see you. So I think the best way to go about this one is maybe to just kind of dive right in. How you guys doing out there, though? I don't want to, just do basketball. We got to chat a little bit. How was everybody's weekend? Week starting out good, Monday and all? Had a good weekend. Did the draft on Saturday. Hung out for a little while over at my buddy Mike's afterward, and we watched some college basketball for a while. Ran into the city and ran an errand and picked up my usual supply. Came back, and then just took Sunday kind of easy. Watched some basketball all day. Decent single NBA lineup on Saturday. Had a shot at the top spot. Didn't quite get there. Then the Sunday lineup didn't make it even to the cash line. It was tanked by, who was I complaining about in Discord yesterday? Karis LeVert, I think. Going up against Jimmy Butler. Do I have that right? And just picked up 2 quick fouls early. Was out after 4 minutes with a 0. Entire first quarter with a 0. I think he finished the entire game with 10 points. Not going to get you there at 7,900 or whatever he costs. That was an ugly one. But otherwise, good weekend. Good hanging out. And now we deal with this ugly slate. At some point, I still got to get out and see. Haven't seen Dune 2 yet. Got to catch that. Haven't seen the new Ghostbusters, but I heard not the greatest reviews on that. Love the last one. Afterlife was great. I'm a big Ghostbusters fan. The first one's one of my favorite movies. Thought Afterlife was great. This one, not getting the greatest reviews, but I'll see it at some point. Steven Leibowitz was watching golf. PGA week long was okay. All right. It's good. I gotta get more into the PGA thing. Just even if I'm just throwing in one lineup. I've said it before. It's just the fact that it starts on Thursday morning is just the worst spot in the world for me to actually remember to make lineups for it. But I love that 4-day stretch, that 4-day sweat. Anywho, that's enough stalling, I guess. Let's talk slate. So I'll run through the Vegas lines as of a little while ago when I put it into the spreadsheet. Starting at the top, Charlotte at Cleveland. Cleveland, 11.5-point favorites. Ugly game environment, 206 total there. Brooklyn at Toronto. Brooklyn favored by 6.5 on the road, 219-point total. Boston at Atlanta. Boston favored by 10.5 on the road, 224.5-point total. Detroit at the Knicks. Knicks favored by 16.5, 211-point total. Pistons, the Hornets, and Memphis all implied under 100 points today. Just something to keep in mind. Washington at Chicago. Chicago favored by 12.5, 226.5-point total there. Portland at Houston. Houston favored by 13, 225-point total. Phoenix at San Antonio. Phoenix favored by 13, 234-point total. That's the juiciest point total on. Oh, no, excuse me, second juiciest point total. The next one, Dallas at Utah. Dallas only favored by 8.5, so one of our two close games. 237.5 point total on the board in that one. Kind of surprised that Dallas isn't favored by 10, at least. Just another 1.5 on there, just with how bad Utah is in general. Not that Dallas is great, but they've got the best four players in that game, and they're all named Luka Doncic. But yeah, I see that one being basically the same as some of these other ones, just with a loftier point total. And then rounding out the night, of course, in the latest game, the Memphis Grizzlies, with everybody questionable, half the team already out, and so on and so forth. Kill me. They're Memphis at Denver. Denver's also got everybody, since it's Memphis coming into town, everybody on Denver that is important is questionable as well. Denver favored by 15.5, 213.5 point total in that one. This is an awful, awful slate of basketball. Not trying to naysay, just the facts. This is just terrible. Let's take a look at the ins, the outs. As of like 4 o'clock, Anthony Simons is now out. I had him in originally, and it came through during the hour and change that I was working on the projections. So I initially had him in and then removed him in the last update that just went up. He's out for everything that we're going to be looking at on the show. Probables: JT Thor, Kobe White, Dalen Terry, Lowry Markkanen's available, Jordan Clarkson and Omer Yurtseven are also available. Questionable: Bryce McGowan's, Xavier Tillman, Derek White, Alec Burks, DeAndre Ayton, Matty Thybul, Alex Caruso, Maxi Kleba, Desmond Bane, Jake LaRavia, Lamar Stevens, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. So that's, 7 players from the Denver and Memphis game that are questionable. And then we get to a long list of outs. All right. You do that thing like a swimmer where you breathe out a few times with one big deep breath in. All right, get ready for it. These are the players that are already known to be out. Leaky Black, Marquez Bolden, Seth Curry, Cody Martin, Mark Williams, Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Dean Wade, Keita Bates-Diop, Cam Johnson, Ben Simmons, Dennis Smith Jr., Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Chris Boucher, DJ Carton, Jakob Poeltl, Jonte Porter, Emmanuel Quickley, Drew Holiday, Neemias Queta, Sadiq Bey, AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson, Mohamed Gouye, not Mohamedou Gouye, which I learned that there are two of them with almost an identical name just the other day. So Mohamed Gouye is out. His brother is, I think they're brothers. I shouldn't have just said that they're brothers. It could just be two guys with shockingly similar names. But the one on Toronto is in. This is the one on Atlanta that is out. Onyeka Okongwu is out. Trae Young is out. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Simone Fontecchio, Taj Gibson, Quentin Grimes, Isaiah Stewart, Aja Thompson, Stanley Umide, also known as most of the Pistons, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, Mitch Robinson, 3 keys from the Knicks, but we know what's going on there. Damian Lee, Charles Bassey, Victor Wembanyama is a big one. Malcolm Brogdon, Jeremy Grant is doubtful. Shaden Sharp, Anthony Simons, Tari Eason, Alperen Şengün, Cam Whitmore, Jabari Smith Jr., Bilal Coulibaly, Tyus Jones, Kyle Kuzma, Eugene Omoruyi, Landry Shamet, Zach LaVine, Julian Phillips, Patrick Williams, Josh Green, Brandon Clark is doubtful, Luke Kennard, here's the Memphis team. Brandon Clark doubtful, Luke Kennard, John Conchar doubtful, Derrick Rose, Marcus Smart, Yuta Watanabe, Vince Williams Jr., Zaire Williams, and then rounding things out, Zeke Naji is also out. All right, that's it for me. See ya. Good luck figuring this slate out. What a mess. And a partridge in a pear tree, as Stephen Leibowitz says. Insane Pump is here. What's going on? Fanatics here. Good to see you. Po Degen Stoner's here. So let's get this thing underway. Sorted by DraftKings win rate, you can see a big piece of chalk at the top of the board. We talked about him the last time that this ugly Detroit team played, and it was just kind of I got him in like the mid-20s. Think he's going to play some minutes, has okay rates, kind of a thing, and came out, played 39 minutes, put up 35 FanDuel points, which is respectable when you're cost, $3,900. I think he was cheaper that day. But Chimezie Metu, standing pretty tall at the top of the board with basically all the bigs from Detroit out. It's just going to be an ugly spot, but on virtue of potential minutes going right back to that level and being an okay per minute performer historically, Looks really, really strong at the top of the board. He's the most popular player on both sites, but we got to him in, excuse me, 63.1% of, called 63.2% of winners on FanDuel, and he landed in 78+% of our top 150. And then on DraftKings, we got him in 47% of the winners, and he landed in 65% of our top 150. Those sound like shockingly big numbers, but on FanDuel, that 78% puts us less than 15% ahead of the field. We are ahead, but it's not crazy ahead. It's not like the field is at 30 and we're at 78. So it's really, really close there. And then on DraftKings, he's also the most popular player. DraftKings just, the ownership totals tend to trend lower. But we're less than 15 points. 15 points off our win rate. We're significantly ahead of the field on DraftKings. So if I'm saying site to site, where does he look better, since there's a bigger difference between us and the field at the $4,100 price tag? I think it is probably a better DraftKings investment, but I think he's just good chalk on both sites. So that's a fun starting point. Anytime you can start the show talking about Chimezie Metu, you kind of want to do so. For the season, he's been a .88 player. Over the tiny, tiny sample that I was able to use here, he's been at .79. I've only got him at .73 today, so I'm not even giving him credit for this much, and he's still pulling these kind of numbers. I don't want to say there's only upward trajectory. Like, I don't necessarily think that's the case, that like he's going to come out and be .88 to 1.0. I'm comfortable saying that the .7-ish range, though, is pretty viable, and there's obviously a little bit of upside there. So that's fun. Next guy on the list, nobody's favorite, Jordan Poole. He's been playing really well lately in a points per minute sense. Since February 20th, in the most reasonable version of this team that I could create, Poole's actually been at 1.31. So he's been taking a nice little ride lately. He's been a real letdown for most of the season, 0.95 per minute over the course of the season, despite 25% usage, and he could have more usage than that if he wants it on any given slate. But he did play 38 minutes the last time out, put up 46.8 FanDuel points. So maybe a little bit of a resurgence in the not reliable, not good necessarily. I don't know exactly what word I'm searching for Jordan Poole, but whatever it is, maybe a little bit of a return to that kind of form. So I think he does look very, very playable at worst. 30% across the board on FanDuel for 6,900 both guard spots. 27.4% and got into 42% of the top 150 at 6,700 both guard spots on DraftKings. Just looks like a very good spot. Zach Collins, back from the concussion protocol, no Wemby. Looks like a reasonable upside play. Just put him at 26 minutes. I think there's, maybe upside 28 to 30, but probably not. Probably stays in that 26-minute range. He only played 19 the last time out. I think that was the first game back from the concussion protocol. But pulling pretty decent numbers. Looks okay on FanDuel. 22% winner, 14% of the top 150. Then on DraftKings at just 5,000. Center only on DraftKings. You have power forward on FanDuel, but 1,000 more. 5,000 center only on DK, 25% winners, and 40% of the top 150. Looks at least like a functional piece that you can maybe put into the Utah spot next to a better center, use him as a cheap center, and pay up elsewhere. I think that's a reasonably good play. And he's been a 1.06 DraftKings points per minute player for the season. Good amount of faith in Zach Collins. Not a star by any means, but a guy who's a good role player, come out there, put a stamp on a game. Got him kind of between this year and last year's number for tonight, just considering that there's going to be plenty for him to do. So I like that spot a little bit. In terms of his ownership, we'll get into some more positional stuff in a sec. Big slate, though. It makes sense to talk about some of the guys just off the top. We're like right with the field on Zach Collins on FanDuel. And then on DraftKings, we're out ahead of the field, but he's one of the more popular players on the entire slate, and we're not that far ahead of the field. The Collins play is looking like a good piece today. Insane slate. Put DJ on unders, rejoice. Jenny McCarthy was in Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead? I don't remember that. I remember the movie. I don't remember Jenny McCarthy being in it. That was before she was Jenny McCarthy, I think, right? It was 95. Oh, look at that. Jenny McCarthy as blonde nurse. Yeah, 95. That was before she was whatever she became. Interesting. Did not remember her being in that. Good call. That was just on recently. I was watching part of it the other day when they're in the projection room. That was one of the first like movies that got a deal. It was that, 3 Days in the Valley, a couple other ones that were like, people really like this Pulp Fiction thing. Let's do some, gritty, like, smart talking crime guys. And just nobody got near Quentin Tarantino. Nobody got near Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. Just the also-ran types. But all those screenplays got made, like, 94 to, like, 98, somewhere around there. Just if you had some bad guys, some hoods that could talk, and gave them some, witty dialogue and punched up their vocabulary to, 225%, your movie was getting made. PoTJ, yes, I love that movie. Live that movie. I don't know if you mean you live it or you love it or both. Trendon Watford is on the board, only on the DK side because he costs 3,000 and I've got him at 16 minutes. That's just price driven, and since there's going to be so much value on this slate, I don't know how much you really need Trendon Watford there. I don't have all that much faith in that one. We're talking about 1.03 DraftKings points per minute, sure. We're talking about a 16-minute projection at the dead min, gets him around 16 points. I don't really love cramming that one into the lineup, though. I just don't know how much true upside there is on that. And you get games like that one in the last game played column right there, where he played 2.2 minutes, put up 6.9 FanDuel points. They are... What are the ins and the outs for them? Too many pieces on this slate. No Cam Johnson, no Dennis Smith Jr., obviously no Ben Simmons, no Keita Bates-Diop for them. I can see the 14, 16 minutes, but there's plenty of guys who could fill those minutes for him. So really, that one just came through the sim on price, and if I took a couple minutes away from him, it would just kind of go away. So I really don't like that Trendon Watford one up at the top. You can throw it in if you're building 150 lineups. You can use it a few times, but I don't know that I get to it 22% of the time, 23.9% of the time. Feels a little bit like that one just crept through on the price. So it is functional, but especially with the values that I think will continue to open up through the night, it probably isn't totally necessary. Truth and Consequences, New Mexico is another one like that. Yep, I remember that. Remember that title more than I remember the movie. As I'm sure some of you have heard me say before, I worked in a video store back in the day. Video stores being a place where you would go physically in your car, get out, stop, walk inside a store, select from thousands of movies that came on these weird plastic things called video cassettes that you would have to put into a thing called a VCR, a video cassette recorder and player. There was Betamax. There was Standard. What the hell was the other one? Beta was the one that died. Anyway, I worked at West Coast Video, so I have titles. I have endless titles and like movie box art in my brain, even if I've never seen the movie. It's just like if you mention a movie title, I'm just like, oh yeah, picture it, third row down, comedy. Be Kind, Rewind. Yep. We had a couple of those. Used to try and fine people for not rewinding their movie. You didn't rewind last time. That was $1. Nobody ever wanted to pay that. I know I rewound it. It's like, why do we cause our employees to get into pointless fights with our customers when we can just go put the tape in? We have the ultra fast rewinders. So dumb. Yeah, I was a West Coast video guy, not Blockbuster. Hate Blockbuster. We had like at a point it was like the clearish boxes. For a while it was like they would go out in the actual box, and then like as the 80s transitioned to the 90s, not that I worked there in the 80s, I was a customer there. Eventually it was just like clear cases with the tape in it, and then like the movie cover would be like on the shelf with the tape behind it. The point being that Blockbuster famously had those Blockbuster cases that were like blue and yellow, and like you could not mistake it for being from anywhere else. We got so many of those in our night drop. Like every day you'd go in and it would just be like Blockbuster tape, Blockbuster tape, Blockbuster tape. Are people that dumb? That's where I learned that people are that dumb. Anyway, a couple of Knicks up near the top of the board. Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo. We've seen a lot of those guys. The Last Starfighter. Pojijan's just in there naming a bunch of movies now. I love it. Alabama Jones. I seen a Betamax once. I don't actually know if I ever saw a Betamax tape, to be quite honest. That was definitely that war was won before I started working in a video store. That was back when I was a kid. When I was really young, like before we like I was 5, 6, 7, something like that. My dad, before we had a VCR even, like would go on a Friday, rent the entire unit. Like you rent the VCR, the whole thing, you hook it up. So he'd rent the entire VCR unit, bring home like 4 movies for the weekend. It's a whole crazy deal. And now you just think of a movie title and the universe beams it into your head or onto your phone or whatever. It's amazing. Amazing times. Living in the future. Anyway. So the Knicks in Tom Thibodeau's continuing quest to just murder Josh Hart and now Deuce McBride. A lot of concentration of minutes for the Knicks. Hart has been playing 40-plus minutes a night. Devo played 40.9 the last time out, put up 52.7. Hart needs every single second of all his minutes to be able to deliver value at these prices on most slates like we've talked about all season. He's a 0.81 per minute player. He's got a 13% usage rate, but he also goes out and has those games where he scores 10 points, grabs 14 rebounds, has a bunch of assists and some steals. Like he does a lot of Josh Hart things. So as long as he's playing 39, 40 plus minutes a night, he's going to continue to be able to hit value at this point. It's just at a certain price, Hart's ceiling just becomes unrealistic because he's not going to go out there and score 25 real life points to support the rest of everything that he does on most nights. So you do have a bit of an artificial cap on Josh Hart on most nights. 35, 45 points is usually a good range to expect him, like right in line with what he did. And then you do have the upside if he scores a few additional points into the low 50s. But it is one that's why he hasn't, even with all this time and everything, gotten out of the 7,000 range, because the sites do acknowledge that a little bit. DiVincenzo's got a little bit more true ceiling on him, just in if he's out there knocking down threes, then this number can climb faster than Josh Hart's. Devo just doesn't do all that much else. But he's shooting 39.5% from three. He's taking 8.2 a game, making 3.2 a game, 14.5 points. So I have plenty of faith in both plays. Hart came up quite a bit more on FanDuel. They came up much more evenly on DraftKings because there's separation in the price. But I like both. I think going up against Detroit, obviously there's reason to believe that both guys could easily succeed here. Not the best game environment, not the best total in the world, but a lot of support for the Knicks, kind of running them out of the gym for a while. And Tibbs has really shown dislike for going to the bench even in a blowout. So I expect basically full minutes for all these guys. I'm sure Deuce is on here somewhere. Here's Jalen hiding down here. Deuce has to be on here. There he is. So Deuce with 39 minutes. He played 48 the other day. Put up 35.9 FanDuel points. He's another guy, though, that just, he's 0.76 per minute for the season. Does a lot of defensive things. He's a very, very good on-ball defender. Tibbs absolutely loves the kid, and he's been playing really well. He's become a key piece for the Knicks, especially over the last few weeks. He's just kind of stepped into that OG role, and he's been getting starts, and he's been playing 38 to 40 to 48 minutes. But the fantasy production is still a little bit lacking. Not that he hasn't been good for fantasy, because if you're getting 36 fantasy points for 5,900, that's not bad. 5,400 on DraftKings, not bad. But that's what's keeping his percentages down a little bit still, is the, again, just a lack of true absolute ceiling. He's not going to rival the best players on the slate, where you can get mid-range guys like that who on the right night can rival the best players on the slate. Deuce, not really one of those guys, but he does look good. 11.5% winner on DraftKings, 14.6% of the top 150. So some relevant nicks for sure. And then Jalen's just easy to get to on any given slate, obviously. Looks better on DraftKings today, though, at 9,200 than he does at 9,800 on FanDuel, which is a little bit pricey. Didn't really get there for us on FanDuel. Anyway, let's try and get some organization in this so it's not just me scattershot talking about whatever I feel like. Chris says, Denver going to trick me into saving spots for value only for everyone to be in. I mean, if that's the worst case scenario, like if you're reserving a couple spots, one of them being Nikola Jokic, and then you save a second spot so that you can pivot out of Jokic and pay like two mid prices in those spots, and then you get stuck with Jokic, there are worse things to be stuck with. I'll give you that. But yeah, I think no matter what happens, you're going to have flexibility in that game for sure, just given that it's Memphis on the other side of it and that everybody on Denver is questionable. So I think Denver's just kind of winking at us and saying, like, this is a day where we're going to give some guys the day off. It's just, is that Jamal Murray and MPJ? Is that Jokic and Jamal Murray? Is that, and they didn't play the last game. So just a little bit tricky, to figure it out ahead of time. But yeah, I do think it's going to be important to Cujo nails it. Just going to leave that there all slate, all show. So I do think it's going to be a spot where you're going to want to have some swappable parts into the later part of the night. That game is 9 o'clock. Dallas, Utah is at 9 o'clock. We've got an hour between those two games and the 3 8 o'clock games. Washington, Chicago, Portland, Houston, and Phoenix, San Antonio. But you do have a nice little 5-game block there where you could leave some movable parts across all of those games and then, lock them in more and more as the evening goes on and we get some news. And hopefully we get the Memphis-Denver news somewhere before 8 o'clock. It's possible. Dallas and Utah, it's possible. All right, let's see. So we're on guards. We're still sorted by DK win rate. It is a little bit concentrated. I mean, these guys call these two 19%ers 20s. So we've got 8 guys in the 20+% win rate range across point guard, shooting guard, and small forward here. Everybody else dips below that. A lot of concentration of ownership across those 3 positions. That's 196% ownership across those 3 positions between Poole, Devo, Amin Thompson, Scoot Henderson, Devin Booker, Cam Thomas, Lonnie Walker, and Fred VanVleet. One of these things is not like the other, and its name is Lonnie Walker. Lonnie 3,400 on DraftKings. I guess that's why he gets there. Not at all relevant to the FanDuel slate. 20-minute projection, 0.97 per minute on DraftKings. I guess he can stay at 3,400. Shooting guard, small forward eligible. Not a high projection, but decent points per dollar mark. Not a ton of true ceiling there. Put up 12 in 12 the other day, right around who he is. Does see a little bit of usage when he's on the court. They are missing plenty of parts. Do I want him even in 12% of 150 lineups against nearly a 20% win rate? I guess I do. That does put us below the field on DraftKings. Not by much. His ownership's closer to that than it is this. I think I'm comfy with that. Like if he's call it 20, if he's at 20 public and we take 10, I'm pretty good with that. On FanDuel again, just not relevant at 4,200. Everybody else is at least somewhat relevant though out of that group. Amin Thompson pulling 5%, 6% of our top 150 on DraftKings at 6,800, 1,000 less than on FanDuel, and point guard small forward separation. He looks a lot better. 22% winner, 26% of the top 150. Scoot also is at least playable on FanDuel at 6,400 point guard only. just under a 10% win rate. Got into a few additional lineups beyond that at 12.67%. But again, at 6,100, he's another guy that looks a little bit better on DraftKings. 21.4% winner and 20% of our top 150. And remember, it's Scoot back to full minutes. So we've got him in the 30s. And no, like everybody else. Right? We've got already confirmed no Simons, no Shaden, no Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant is doubtful. No Brogdon. Where'd Banton come up? Where did he come up? Now I'm curious. Okay, Banton hit the board a little bit. Only on FanDuel, though. Interesting. 5,600 point guard, shooting guard on FanDuel. Delano Banton gets on the board a little. 14% win rate, 10.6% of the top 150. On DraftKings for 5,900, he is useless. Point guard, shooting guard, 0.3% winner, 0% of the top 150. That is a big, big difference. For 300 more, he is rendered completely irrelevant on DraftKings. Not to say that he doesn't have the talent, and he's shown us the clear upside to be able to succeed. But played 32.7 and put up just 18 fantasy points in the last one. Bubble might have burst a little bit there. But does look playable, at least on FanDuel. And again, just missing parts again in Portland. Po DJ's going to a couple of University of Northern Colorado games. Sounds like a fun time. The baseball and bong rip edition of DFS baseball. That's what the Po DJ's looking for. I feel like there's probably a couple bong rips involved in going to a University of Northern Colorado baseball game as well. Got the feeling. Javon Freeman, Liberty Day. Not crashing the party at the top of the board, but definitely looking pretty playable at 3,900. Everybody from Toronto out. I think I accidentally didn't list Jamius Ramsey also is out. I think. Let me double check that, because I think I skipped him on the list by accident. Oh, no, he's not. I'm wrong. I swear I saw his name earlier. Hang on one second. Let me check this. Oh, not on the team anymore. The 10-day expired. That's why. I was like, I knew that I saw his name and I didn't give him minutes, but he wasn't on the injury report. So yeah, no Jamius Ramsey anymore. Second 10-day contract expired. So yeah, that's why we're getting. Yeah, thanks, Trev. And Steven. Yep, both you guys got it. Thank you. Beat me to the punch there. Appreciate it, guys. Should have just stayed here knowing that you guys would come up with the answer for me. What he said, yeah. So yeah, a little bit, back to the well, I guess, with Freeman Liberty, a little bit at least. He's 3,900. That's the reason he, kind of brought him up, because he is a value play as compared to some of these guys from the mid-range or a little bit more expensive, like Marcus Sasser, with no real love or faith from me. Lonnie Walker wasn't really working on FanDuel anyway. Freeman Liberty's hitting on both sites at least a little bit. 16.6% winner on DK, 16.3 on FanDuel, 20+% of him on the FanDuel slate in our top 150. Just 13% of them on DraftKings. Might have got a little popular on DK. Yeah, we're right around the field on DraftKings. Pretty good with that, and since we have a few additional points of win rate, it makes me feel at least comfy putting him in as like a decent piece of chalk with multi-guard eligibility for 39. It's not bad. He's that said, 0.70 per minute on FanDuel, 0.70 on DraftKings so far for the season. Only a 15% usage rate. 23 minutes the last time out. Put up less than 18 fantasy points. So, again, we're not dealing with high-faith, high-caliber players in a lot of these spots. Speaking of, Marcus Sasser. 32 minutes, 4,500 on FanDuel, pulling nearly a 16% win rate, but we got him less than 12% of the time against that. Check that public ownership. We are like half the field on Sasser. I'm pretty comfy with that. He's an okay player, 0.87 per minute on the season, 18% usage rate, but 27 minutes, 12 fantasy points the last time out. Feel like he's had a couple of those on us recently since he's been popping up lately. Over the most recent stretch, in the best version that we could replicate for tonight's scenario, going back to at least mid-February. I might have moved this one back to get more minutes to the start of the calendar year. Sasser's been at 0.73 per minute, down from his 0.87, 0.86. I've got him closer to that today, going up against a very good defensive New York team that, again, these guys are the Pistons, the Hornets, and the Grizzlies, all implied for less than 100 points tonight. The Knicks have held a bunch of their recent opponents in the low to mid 90s lately. And Detroit is one of the worst teams in basketball, and Marcus Sasser has not been producing well over the last month and change. So we're not here on him. We're in the mid 0.7s, and he's still hitting the board, which is a pain in the ass. Again, we're half the field on FanDuel on him. On DraftKings, we're, I think, again, half the field. Yeah, about half the field on both sides. 4,700 on DK, point guard, shooting guard. 17% winner, but only got him 8% of the time in our top 150 performing lineups. So I think around half the field on Sasser across the board is probably pretty advisable. And then with Lonnie Walker, who is another $3,400 play, again, the field was coming up around 20%. We cut that down to 10%. More comfy option in Freddie VanVleet. Cam Thomas, I wouldn't call him comfy, but at least we know he's got elite ceiling on the right night. He's entirely scoring dependent. So if his shot is off, if he's not scoring the basketball in real life, forget it. He's not going to win you a fantasy slate. But on the days where he goes out and lights up the scoreboard, he's got a ton of upside. 29.4% usage rate. He's been around a point per minute for the season. This is a low end game from him. Or like a mid-range game from him, I guess. He was okay scoring that night, but didn't do anything else to get him into, a normal player at 7,200 scores whatever his actual real-life scoring points total was in that game, and then has a few rebounds, a few assists, maybe a steal, maybe a block, whatever to pad those stats. That's a mid-30s game from probably a lot of other guys with whatever point total he came away with in that game. It's just not what he does. But even with that, 7,200 shooting guard, small forward, 44.49% of winners on FanDuel and 54% of the top 150. Sign me up. We've got no Cam Johnson. We've got other missing pieces for Brooklyn tonight going up against a soft Toronto team. I like the upside for Cam Thomas to be able to score tonight. On DraftKings, 20.5% winner, 37% of the top 150. Seems like a very easy spot to get to. Ahead of the field on DK. And I'm going to guess on FanDuel as well. Yep. Head of the field on both. Win rates are strong. Win rate is ahead of the field on FanDuel and with the field on DraftKings. And then Freddie, which is where I started that before I jumped up to Cam Thomas. Freddie's coming up in 46% of the top 150 on FanDuel with a 25% win rate. 8,300. Come on. It's a reasonably soft opponent. They're favored by 13 points at home with a 225 point total, implied for 119. Decent enough game environment. Freddie's been at since mid-February with Şengün out, accounting for everything, 1.33. I've just got him even against the soft opponent tonight at 1.24 per minute, which obviously is up from his season-long number. But it's not really that, it's below what he's been over the last month and change. So I think reasonable expectation for Freddie. You can knock a point or two off of it if you're not comfortable having them that high. Put it into your optimizer, your sim tools, whatever, acemind.io for sim tools. And knock 2 points off of it if you want to and take that rate down a little bit. But I like Freddie in that spot. Amen was right there as well. We talked about him. Amen's been performing at a 1.25 kind of level over that same stretch with Şengün out. It's just looked very, very good of late. I expect we'll also see some Jock Lando from that game. He's been at a 1.15. DeAndre Ayton questionable. Potential for him to have a decent day or at least not have to worry about matching up against a better center. Devin Booker going up against San Antonio. The only issue there really is the three-headed star monster that they've got. But Book played 30.5 minutes the other night, put up nearly 52 FanDuel points. At his 9,500, that's right about the okay level. That's like, all right, Booker didn't win me this slate, but he didn't lose me this slate at 9,500. At 89 on DraftKings, about the same. Came up with a 21.3% win rate and 14.6% of the top 150. We did get him a lot less than those win rates, though, so let's see where he's at in the public ownership. Far and away the most popular member of the Suns group there. So we're a little bit more than 10 points below the field on Devin Booker on DraftKings. And on FanDuel, probably similar range. Actually, we're even further below. We're about 3 times less than the field. Field is like 3 times what we are, rather, on the FanDuel slate. I have no issues going to Devin Booker in this spot. You can easily consider it like that's a luxury item. I'm happy to pay for it. But if you're paying those prices, why pay those prices to just line up with the field on that play? Especially in a game and a game environment where you can get a lower owned Kevin Durant for the same price. This is the FanDuel slate. Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, same price, 9,500 on FanDuel. Obviously different positioning. But Durant coming up less owned. You can dip by a lot at the same positioning and pick up Bradley Beal for 76 on FanDuel, and he's got no ownership going. Not the same projection for Beal. You're talking about a 10-point lower projection, but 10 points, 2,000 in salary, it's probably worth doing. And obviously Beal has, for as much better as Booker has been for the season, I think they do still have very similar ceilings. So I'm okay with any shares of Booker that you want to take up to 15% on FanDuel, 20% on DraftKings. Call the win rate like your ceiling on what you want exposure-wise. But Sims are telling us to get below the field on Booker. That said, with Beal, he would be on this board if he was crushing it. There he is. So just a 2% top 150 and 2.2% winner on FanDuel, 4.2% winner and 4.6% of the top 150 on DraftKings. This price does put him in competition directly with a lot of these guys that just come up a lot better. But as a true pivot from Booker, I don't really mind that despite the low rates. If you're just looking for a potential ceiling pivot out of the same game at the same position for a lower price, I think Beal makes sense in that role. Again, it's not a strong endorsement of Bradley Beal given these sim results. It's just a potential pivot to no ownership for the similar type of guy. Where else? Where else can we go? Trey Jones in that same game. I don't love the San Antonio side of that game, but we've got some guys picking up a little bit of rate because of no Wemby. There's just, flushing out a lot for everybody else to do now. Trey Jones, 14.7% winner, 18.6% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 0.93 for this season On DraftKings, he's 5,900, landed in 15% of winners, and 27% of our top 150 is worth exploring, actually. That puts us ahead of the field by a solid handful of shares. I don't mind that. He's cheap enough that it's functional. He's been at 0.94 per minute for this season. We've got him tonight. Picking up about 1/10 of a point tonight. Just for the roll. Could take that back, just given the pretty good opponent on the other side. But unless we're thinking that San Antonio is going to score like 55 points tonight total, somebody's going to have to score fantasy points. So I like going to their point guard for some of it. And then Collins was looking pretty decent for his price. Devin Vassell I haven't spotted yet. There he is. Devin Vassell also looking pretty good out of San Antonio. If you just want a more, somewhat more reliable true ceiling type. That said, this isn't reliable actually. In 24 minutes, he put up 9.1 FanDuel points the last time he played. I think I had him that game. But at 7,300, we do have known upside available there. 19.4% in winners, 25% of our top 150 on FanDuel, 12% of winners, and 10.6% of the top 150 for 7,300 on DraftKings. Same price, obviously doesn't play as well on DK against that lower cap. He does pick up point guard eligibility over there. At worst, he's very playable on DraftKings, and he looks pretty decent on FanDuel. At least a guy to remember is available at this price when you're looking at like DiVincenzo. All right, for 200 more, I can get Devin Vassell, and he is actually, since we're sorted by DraftKings, it doesn't line up properly. Vassell actually a little bit better than Devo on FanDuel. Luka Doncic, easy to get to if you want him. 13% across the board on DraftKings is pretty good for 12.8. Highest overall projection, highest point per minute available tonight. Should be able to do whatever he wants on the basketball court against Utah. See no threat to his total domination of this game. Played 34-7 the last time out, put up nearly 65 fantasy points. This total is below where we have him projected today on DK anyway. On FanDuel, it's a half a point above our median projection for today. You give Luka 36 to 38 minutes tonight, and 100 fantasy points is probably in play. Settle into the mid-80s somewhere for a real ceiling. But love the spot for Luka. If you can afford him, you can figure out ways to get there. Came up in 26% of the top 150 on FanDuel against an 11.5% win rate. Means we've got plenty of money to spend to get there, and he looks like a very good luxury item. Jamal Murray, if he plays, nearly a 12% winner, 14% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 13% winner, and 30% of the top 150 on DraftKings. Suggests to me he's probably a little low owned. Yeah, that's more than double the projected ownership for Murray on DK. Just need him out there. Didn't play the last game. Averaging 32 minutes a night. We've got him at 35 tonight. Just kind of spread out a little bit of minutes-wise across these guys. Let's see. Should I shave a minute off of him? That doesn't matter. I might actually take a minute or two away from Murray. That 35 feels high. It's been at 33 over the last 3 games that he's played. $34, $32, $36, $34. Yeah, 33, 34 feels a little bit better than 35. Murray will come down. It'll be very, very slight. If he plays, he'll still sim out around these numbers. Maybe you get a little bit less of them against the top 150 on DraftKings there. Call it 25% instead of 30%. Definitely still looks good. Still looks playable for 86 on FanDuel, 84 on DraftKings. Soft matchup for Denver. Easy spot. A lot of blowout risk, but that's true of basically every game tonight. So you really can't sweat it. Maybe it does impact how much you want to get to Luka, how much you want to get to Jokic, just in terms of, all right, if every game has blowout risk, why do I want to necessarily book the guys with with the same blowout risk at the highest possible price. But those are also easily the two guys that are, with trajectory toward by far the highest fantasy scores on this slate. So once you start, you can get yourself tied up in knots once you start really sweating the blowout on a night like this. I think you just kind of roll with it. So we talked about Gary Trent looking very playable on FanDuel at worst, 6,800, 12.8% winner, 16% of the top 150. On DraftKings, 11.6% winner for 6,300, but only landed in 3% of lineups. Probably means the field's got a ton of them. Yep. That is like 1/6 of his projected popularity on DK. So if you want to take him up to like 10, 12, you're supported at least by the win rate on the DraftKings slate. But Sim's strongly suggesting to be under the field on Gary Trent Jr. tonight on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I think that's probably more in line with the field. Yeah, we're like right around the field on FanDuel. Deuce we already talked about. Oops. Deuce. Again, he's just capped by a little bit of... I don't even want to say talent because he is a talented guy. It's just the things that he's talented at don't necessarily accrue a ton of fantasy points on it on every slate. But we're looking at a minimum 36 minutes, even if they light up Detroit, with upside to 48. If it goes into overtime, who knows? Tibbs is a madman. But yeah, Deuce is not a great per minute performer, but he's got a lot of minutes. So I think he's at least somewhat reliable. 5,400, both guard spots around this level. On FanDuel, it's a lot less. Mikal Bridges, one of the better pieces from Brooklyn, coming through with a 7+% win rate, but only 3% exposure on FanDuel. 10+% winner and 7% exposure on DraftKings. Another guy we're probably a little bit behind the field. No, actually not really. Yeah, we're actually okay there. We're right in line with the field on Mikal Bridges on both sites. And both sites have a little bit more room in terms of the win rate. So Bridges is another guy that maybe you can keep in your pocket for a few additional shares as you're building lineups. You just hit a spot where it's, if you're hand building or whatever, it's, all right, I've got the 73, I've got the 69, I've used this other guy a whole bunch of times. Let me get one additional lineup in there with Bridges in it. He's got the win rate to support that, but he's not a priority by any means. Caris LeVert, much softer opponent tonight. There's the game I was talking about. 10 FanDuel points, ended up playing just 20 minutes, sat out 8 minutes of the first quarter with 2 fouls that he picked up in the first 4 minutes. Didn't come back until a little bit into the second quarter. Just was not a good day for Caris LeVert. For the season, he's been at 1.03, 20 plus 22% usage. He's been good of late. Obviously, they're dealing with no Donovan Mitchell still, no Max Strus, no Dean Wade, all those different pieces missing. LeVert over the recent runs since like mid-February in this version of the team, he's been at like 1.15 over what's become a decent sample size. I cut that. I've got him at 109 tonight, which is more in line with the season-long total. Halfway in between, maybe. But going up against Charlotte, there is reason to believe in Caris LeVert again. We got to him a little bit ahead of the win rate on FanDuel. Right in line with it. 8% in the top 150 on DraftKings. Double that on FanDuel. Puts us neatly ahead of the field on the FanDuel slate and a couple points ahead of the field on the DraftKings slate on Caris LeVert. Derek White, first Celtic I think we've gotten to after we've had a lot of Celtics lately. White looking pretty good on both sites, 13% across the board on FanDuel for 8,000 at both guard spots. Point per minute plus with upside for more in recent games. Since mid-Feb, he's been at 1.22, which is dramatic. We're giving him 1.13 tonight, which I think is a little bit more reasonable. Still a tenth of a point above his season-long production, accounting for no Drew Holiday. Should be okay game, maybe. Well, no, because Atlanta's missing everybody. I forgot. 10.5 point spread, 224.5 point total. Bleh. We got to have some pieces from Atlanta. Here's DeJounte Murray, who is now up to 10-1 on FanDuel and 9,800 on DraftKings. Still pulling his weight a little bit. He's at worst very playable with a monster ceiling. He played less than 31 minutes the other night, put up 62.4 FanDuel points. And for his recent run, going back to the start of the calendar year, no Trey, no bunch of other guys, no Jalen Johnson tonight. Onyeka Okongwu obviously is still out. No Sadiq Bey still. A lot of missing parts here for Atlanta. DeJounte Murray has stepped up over the last couple of months. He's been playing at a 1.52 level. I don't have him nearly at that. I've got him at 1.28 for tonight. Obviously a very tough opponent in Boston, but I had to give him a little bit more than his season-long number, so I felt like settling around there was fairly appropriate. But the point of that is there is easy 50-plus point upside here, and even against Boston, he is a very, very good individual player. So I think we could be looking at another 60-ish point game. I don't think that's nearly out of the question. A lot tougher road to get there against Boston, but I don't dislike that DeJounte Murray spot. Bruce Brown, very playable, 22.3%, 17% on FanDuel. On DraftKings, a little bit less for 6,200. He's cheaper on FanDuel. He's multi-position point guard and small forward. I like that on DraftKings. 8% winner, 4.6% of the top 150. He's been getting plenty of run. He's been up and down a little bit. Best version of this team that I could put together, he's only been at 0.77. It's a fairly small sample, though, with this group. I have him at 0.91 tonight, and I'm behind projections that I saw in other places. But I have trouble really justifying it against a at least middle-of-the-road Brooklyn team. With the recent run, with the low per minute that he's been at, I have trouble just automatically assigning Bruce Brown to significantly higher than his season-long production, which I'm already doing by 1/10 of a point per minute. Going beyond that makes me uncomfortable. So we might be a little low on Bruce Brown today, but we're still getting a ton of them. You could argue that he should have a little bit more than that on DraftKings. So if you wanted him a little bit more, I won't sweat it. I won't tell you you're wrong. But I'm projecting him slightly differently than what I've seen in other places tonight. I'm kind of riding with the what the truth of Bruce Brown has been lately. What are you guys talking about? Derek White's out? When did that happen? Derek White out. Xavier Tillman out. Duncan Robinson out. Alec Burks out. More concentration of minutes for the Knicks. All right. Forget everything I said about Derek White. Probably just going to give a bump there to Mr. Pritchard then. Again. I think we do have Tatum, Jalen, Kristaps all available. So, yeah, Pritchard probably just jumps. I had him at 25 minutes. He's in the mid-5s. And then just a little trickle-down impact there. Pritchard was right here. So it's going to be a big, big step back up for Peyton Pritchard again. 5,300. He's going to jump into the 30s minutes-wise probably. Played 33.7, put up 33.6 the other night. Can definitely get back to that point per minute type level. Over the last couple of months, he's been at 0.91. It's right where I had him today, but I'll double check what the rate looks like joining the starters. We're just getting that much time, but that'll be the key guy there. And then we'll probably see a couple just trickle down minutes for Sammy Hauser. Actually, that's true. 14 minutes coming off the board from Tillman as well. What do we got? Svi probably gets back into the mix there for some bench minutes. Yeah, so I took minutes from Svi, from O'Shea Brissett. Each of those guys probably gets a couple trickle-down minutes that won't impact the fantasy slate all that much. They've been a little bit tricky with the starting lineups from time to time. They've been giving a lot of these guys rest. They've got everything basically locked up. They're a couple games off the 1 seed if they haven't already locked it up in terms of their magic number to lock down the 1 seed. But it's not a question. So they're already in like rest up kind of a mode. So keep an eye out. We'll see what happens the rest of the way. But obviously losing Derek White is a biggie already. And taking Xavier Tillman off the board as well gave me, what does that do? That's 49 minutes going back into the pool for the Celtics, who tend to run a fairly tight little group. So that'll be a biggie, but the big beneficiary there is going to be Peyton Pritchard again. Yep, appreciate that, fellas. Power saying, tonight is a toss-up with so many possible blowouts. Just going to play 20 and pray and figure out how the NFL is going to ban hip-drop tackles and what country Diddy is flying to as his houses are raided. Are they raiding Diddy's houses? Seems like he deserves it. Just, one man's opinion, but yeah, it seemed pretty monstrous, some of the things that were going on there. The running man says, last time Zach Collins was so exposed, he got into foul trouble right away. I don't remember who that game was against. But, it's some guys do rack up fouls at pretty high rates. It's difficult to jump off of a player for that kind of a reason. There are a lot of savvy guys on Phoenix, though, that could certainly draw him into foul trouble. A lot of, when I say savvy guys, a lot of experienced veterans, a lot of guys that'll be directly going up against him. So I could see it being an issue. It's at least a good mention. I'll say that. Not just directly because of the last game necessarily, but just a little bit of, short on big bodies anyway. So why wouldn't they try and throw some weight at him? Let's see, what do I have for, where could I check that? Now I'm curious. That's, yeah, this will tell me. Collins. It's not 181 fouls in 1,300 minutes. It's like one every 7 minutes. That's over 58 games. Yeah, it's honestly a good point. It's not something that I want to downgrade the play on, but it is something to at least keep in the back of your mind as you're clicking him into your lineup. And if he fails, that's a good possibility of why. Let's put it that way. But again, we're not here looking to, try and project fouls. We're not here looking to, find reasons to knock good plays down necessarily. And I still think he weighs out as a better play than that, or than as a good play rather than something to worry about. But it is an apt point. I appreciate it. What else do we have guards-wise? Murray we've talked about. Bradley Beal we talked about. But again, a somewhat, despite these low sim results, a somewhat reasonable, direct, cheap pivot at no ownership from a much more popular Devin Booker play for 2,000 more on both sides. Dennis Schroeder looks playable on FanDuel, playable on DraftKings. Kind of an is who he is spot for Schroeder. Going up against a nothing opponent, 33.8 minutes the last time out, put up 28.9 fantasy points. That's about my expectation for Schroeder most nights. Got him at 34 minutes, 30 points tonight. 28 to 34 fantasy points is your typical Dennis Schroeder performance. Shorthanded Washington team maybe rolls out some Johnny Davis minutes at 3,700. He didn't really hit the board on FanDuel, just 3.9% of winners and only got to him 0.67% of the time in the top 150 on DraftKings. Doesn't look all that relevant, but did land on the board a little bit with that win rate, but very, very minimal. Couple shares at most. Jared Butler, potentially a relevant cheap play on FanDuel for 4,200 shooting guard only. 12% across the board on DraftKings at 4,400 point guard only. Didn't hit the board at all. Jordan Goodwin, we don't really need to talk about. Let's find some outliers here. Delano Banton, who I wrote up before, a little bit of a 14% win rate on FanDuel, 10% of the top 150. On DraftKings, he didn't hit the board at all at 5,900, but on FanDuel at 56, he does a little bit. The shine has kind of come off of it, though. 18 points in 32 minutes the other night. We did see him hit a couple ceilings, though, and he's back to a 30-minute projection here. So some expectation that he has at least a little bit of ceiling on him. Colin Sexton with a 7% win rate, but we didn't really get him. Nobody else looks really relevant. Keontae George at 5%. Grady Dick at 7%. Even at 4,900, just 7.2%, 5.3% of our top 150 for Grady Dick. On DraftKings at 53, he didn't hit the board at all. That is way too high on DraftKings price. He's projected for a good chunk of minutes. He's just not really that good. He's just picked up some fantasy shares lately because of, price off of rate, but there's not a lot of ceiling there most nights. And again, just, I don't love that matchup going up against Brooklyn. Let's grab some forwards here. So bear in mind, as we talk through these percentages, everything has already changed and is likely to change 6 or 7 more times. So most of this won't be relevant by the time the slate starts. Appreciate you guys hanging out, though. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe. Once again, Chimezie Metu, top of the board on both sites. Most popular player on both sites. We are ahead of the field on both. He looks like a good piece of chalk on both, just on virtue of being a big man who's going to get some minutes. That said, again, the Knicks very, very good defensively. Even their bigs are pretty good defensively. They clean the glass really well. So maybe it knocks down the production from Metu, but he is only 3,900 on FanDuel, 4,100 on DraftKings, and he's coming up a ton. 63% of winners, 78% of our top 150, and that's only 10 to 15 points ahead of the field on FanDuel. The field has him like crazy on FanDuel. Field's more tempered than we are on DraftKings. They're below our win rate, which is always good, and we got to a lot more of them than the field did. You can obviously trim that down, roster them in half your lineups instead of 65%. Totally fine with that. You want to bring it down to like field level, you're dealing with like mid-30s probably. I talked about Watford. It's just price driven, and it's very, very, very tenuous. I don't know that he gets the 16 minutes that are making this a price driven play. There's a lot of different directions those minutes could go. He played 2.2 the last time out, 6.9 fantasy points. Josh Hart, totally fueled by minutes, but the price stays about right in this like mid-7 territory that the sites have had him in. Both forward spots on both sites. 23% winner on DraftKings, 32% winner on FanDuel. Plenty of shares of them on both sites. DiVincenzo, like I talked about, I like the raw scoring ceiling a little bit more for DiVincenzo because it's based on a little bit of bucket making there, which you just have more opportunity to do most of the time on the basketball court. Josh Hart, not a lot of shots available for him, so needs to do those scrappy Josh Hart things and play 40 minutes to hit value, but he's been fairly consistently doing it. Amen Thompson, we talked about in the guard spots as well. Lonnie Walker, we talked about. Keldon, 0.99 per minute on DraftKings, 0.96 per minute on FanDuel. No Wemby tonight. Keldon, over the last stretch, has been still like that same guy, no matter what happens. Since the beginning of the either calendar year or just the beginning of the season, I forget which I ended up using, but he's been at 0.94 in this situation. There's no real love for Keldon here. He's just okay. Is who he is kind of a spot. Lands in 11% of winners on FanDuel, 8% of our top 150. On DraftKings for 5,400, he looks a little bit better. 17.4% of winners, and we got to him 22% of the time in our top 150. That puts us... No, that's FanDuel. Good. Does put us ahead of the field. That's weird. Does put us ahead of the field on Keldon. I'm comfy knocking him down a little bit from here. He sims out well against, the win rate that we've got there is several points ahead of the field's exposure. 22% feels a little high, but against how the field is aligned, that works. I just don't love the player. It's a little bit of bias maybe creeping in on my part for how many times I've been burnt by Keldon. I haven't gotten him a lot this year at all. It's an effective enough price, though, on DK at 54. So 18 to 20% is probably where you want to be, and probably I would skew to the lower side, maybe 16 to 18. But then you start getting a little bit more aligned with the field. They're in the low double digits. Dorian Finney-Smith coming up a little bit strong on DraftKings, 16.5% winner, 15, call it, percent of the top 150 for 4,200 of power forward. Not all that relevant on FanDuel, playable on FanDuel, but not a great play. Another low usage, low per minute guy. On the right night, he picks up some stocks and some rebounds and so on and so forth and gets you there, but it's kind of thin. 21.2 minutes the other night, put up 9.8 FanDuel points. I think that was his return from a couple missed games. Kelly O, he's been really relevant lately. 7,100 center and power forward, 20% across the board on FanDuel. Looks pretty good. Played 32, put up 42 the other night. 16, 17% across on DraftKings at 7,100, same positioning. Looks very good on both sites. No real issues going to Kelly O. He's just been a productive guy. 1.10 for the season. I think it's a little below that recently. But obviously ceiling for more. No, 1.14. So he's been a little ahead of the season-long number, not by a giant leap. And that's right where I've got him for tonight. Wouldn't be surprised to see another good Kelly O game here. Denny Avdia, 16% winner, just 10% of the top 150 on FanDuel, 15 and 10% on DraftKings. Look like we got some more of the value-related pieces out of Washington than we did the top-end guys. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because Poole was up near the top. Denny is very popular on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, I suspect the same is true. We're a handful of points below the field on both sites at our 10.67 identical alignment on both. If you wanted to go up to like 15, you're probably okay. Puts you basically in line with the field. Don't really have an issue with it. It's supported by the win rate, but not that much more than that for Denny here. 7,600, it's just 4.57 points per dollar on FanDuel, 4.91 on DraftKings at 7,200. In the best version that I could replicate of this team over the last couple of months, he's been just a 0.99 per minute player. It's not far off the season-long number, but I don't know that it's totally worth getting like really, really excited about. It's another guy where I'm a couple points behind some of the competitors. They've got him more in the 1-1 range. I don't think that he's incapable by any means in this spot of getting there. But it just bounces us off the field a little bit, where we, maybe a couple points below the field. Maybe at most you want to get like right in with the field. DeMar DeRozan on the other side of that game, pulling a 17% win rate, but just 8% shares on FanDuel. That puts us way below the field on FanDuel. Wow. Just want to check where I'm at against that projection. DeRozan for the season has been at 1.06 per minute on the FanDuel scale over the recent run since mid-Feb. He's been at 1.11. I've got him at exactly 1.11 tonight. It's a pushover team. I guess I could give him a little bit more than that. It's another one where I'm a couple points behind the competition. They're picking up, Chicago rather, picking up 4.8 possessions in my model in this game. So plenty of additional upside for them. I'm going to put a little flag on DeRozan. Maybe I find him another minute or another little bit of rate there. Nah, not minute. I might owe DeMar DeRozan a little bit of additional rate. It would just be speculative on the nature of the opponent. The way he came through the model is right on line with what he's been over the last couple of months. And we know DeRozan can go out there and have his bad from his mid-range jumper kind of a day. I don't want to say lazy kind of a day, but underperforming kind of a day. We know DeRozan's capable of that, but that's why he costs $8,400 on FanDuel, $8,200 on DraftKings. So, point being, we are well below the field on FanDuel with a little room to expand to, maybe call it 15%, but that would still be significantly below half-ish of the field. And then on DraftKings, it's probably the same. Just 7% of them on DraftKings. Yeah. We're closer to the field. Field's a couple points ahead of our win rate. I think 15-ish% on both sides of DeRozan is probably about right, given where the field's at. You could give him, if you're adjusting in a optimizer or a sim tool, 2.5 fantasy points or so upward if you want to pad him back out. I'm just reading news as it pops up. Doesn't look like anything overly relevant. Tuesday. Bryce McGowan's is available for Charlotte. Hurrah, hurrah. I'm curious what that Alec Burks one does to the Knicks. I wasn't giving him any kind of run. But he was at 14 minutes. I had him and Bojan both at 14 minutes. Bojan just played 7 the last time out. Revenge spot, if that's your thing. None of the guys that Detroit got from the Knicks are available today. Oh, no, that's not true. I think Evan Fournier is available today. Boy, and talk about a guy who potentially has revenge in his heart against this team. Yeah, I got Fournier in for 18 minutes. I didn't see him anywhere on the board there, though, so probably not worth bringing up. But I do think it could potentially, the reason I'm talking about it is just because the way that Tibbs runs this team and the way that the minutes are already distributed, like everybody who could pick up those Alec Burks minutes is basically already getting them. I'll throw a couple token minutes maybe in the direction of like Shake Milton. But I think Bojan is going to go from the 14, 15 that I had him at probably into the mid-20s. So could be maybe a sneaky okay spot for Bojan. He's been bad since joining the Knicks. He went from a 20 real-life points per game scorer to like nothing since joining the Knicks. He's been in a fantasy sense. He's been at 0.66 per minute since joining the Knicks. Been really bad. But that's also got him at 3,500 on DraftKings, 4,200 on FanDuel. Talking about a guy who is a 40% three-point shooter. A lot of this is from his days in Detroit because he's just not getting this kind of run anymore. But you can see how it still holds up even with the 20 or so games that he's played in a more limited fashion for the Knicks. If Bojan's out there taking threes, there's always upside. He's got to make a few of them. He's been abysmal since getting to New York at shooting threes or making threes. But if he picks up like 10, 12 sneaky minutes because there's no Alec Burks today and Tibbs just, squeezes it down to like an 8-man and does his thing. Now, if they get way, way out ahead of Detroit, it becomes a little bit more unpredictable. Like maybe Tibbs relents and gives minutes down the bench to some guys. But I think that could also potentially benefit Bojan. It's not like he's in the starting 5. That's one that could get a little bit sneaky. Just keep an eye on where he lands projection-wise. I mean, if you see him jump from 12 and change to 20 and change, I probably gave him the minutes, and he's probably going to be worth it at 3,500, 4,200. That said, again, he has been very, very bad lately. Danny, we did Aaron Gordon, especially if they're missing parts, could probably only go up from here. He was also on that list of just everybody from Denver they threw out there as questionable today. But Gordon showed you his upside in the last one, nearly 37 minutes, 51.9 FanDuel points. He comes back at only 6,400 on FanDuel, power forward only. Same price on DraftKings, power forward only. 14% across the board on DraftKings, 22.8%, and 32% of our top 150 on FanDuel. Gordon's looking like a juicy spot on the FanDuel slate. 5.2 points per dollar. A little bit behind Jeff Green, but Jeff Green a lot lower of an overall expectation and no comparable ceiling. MPJ from the same team also might not play. Also was looking pretty strong, though. I don't know how much side-by-side Gordon and MPJ I would want, especially if everybody from Denver ends up playing. But both guys individually are looking very good. Less so on DraftKings for MPJ as well. 7,000 both forward spots. Playable, but just in the 8% across the board range. Lauri Markkanen, available tonight. 7% winner on FanDuel. Just got to him a little under 3% of the time in the top 150. 11-12% across the board on DraftKings. Much more playable on the DK slate. He's playable on FanDuel. He could get you there, but he's not looking great against the ownership. Public's got him a little bit more than that. Public is like triple our very tiny exposure rate while still being in the single digits. Easy enough to get ahead of the field if you want him, but not a lot of support from the sim there. On FanDuel, or on DraftKings rather, I think we're probably just coming up right around the field. Yep. Actually a little ahead. Tiny little bit ahead of the field on DraftKings for 8,000 for Lauri Markkanen. Bruce Brown we talked about, but Agbaji we didn't. Agbaji is a shooting guard only on FanDuel for 4,800, and he's pulling 16% win rate, 16% exposure. He was at a point per minute the last time. We've seen him hit that point per minute a couple of times, but for the season, he's been at 0.65 per minute. So bear in mind, we're not talking about a great player here, but he does have range out to about a point per minute on the right night. Over the course of who the hell knows what I use for the sample with this team with all the missing parts. Again, no for Toronto, no Emmanuel Quickly, no, this is the other guy. Excuse me, no, this is the guy who's in. So annoying. Mamadou, and I say guy, it's pronounced something like that. Guye? Not sure how to pronounce that last name. But Mamadou for Toronto is available. I've only got him for like 8 minutes tonight. The one Muhammad, I want to say his name is, just straight up Muhammad from Atlanta is out. So just to clear that up. But the actual point I was trying to make there, Toronto with no RJ Barrett, no Emmanuel Quickly, no Jonte Porter, no Jamius Ramsey, no Jakob Poeltl, no Chris Boucher, no Scotty Barnes, no GJ Carton. So we're dealing with a massively depleted Toronto team, which has led Ochai Agbaji in the most reasonable version I could create of this to a 1.07 per minute mark over the course of whatever that stretch was. I have him nowhere near that. I've got him 0.3 of a point below that, 0.77 for tonight. But 0.77 notably ahead of his season-long mark, which was 0.65. Total crapshoot. 4,800 on FanDuel, 5,100 on DraftKings. Lands very playable on the FanDuel slate. We're bordering on priority. He's lower than a priority play, but he's a good mid-range guy to keep in mind there. But definitely a big basement there too. Much bigger basement than he's got ceiling or attic or whatever you want to extend that analogy to. Single digits across the board on DraftKings, but does look playable there. He's a forward, both forward spots on DraftKings. 5,100 more expensive on the DK slate, different positioning. Doesn't work out quite as well. He's playable, but nowhere near a priority on DK. Jeff Green, entirely price-driven on FanDuel. 24 minutes, 4,000, small forward only, 21.2% winner, 31% of the top 150. That's another one that just gets a little sticky. You're talking about a 0.69 per minute performer, 15% usage rate for the season. He played 25 minutes. He put up nearly 34 fantasy points the other day, though. Since this Houston team became a total mess. We've got no Şengün tonight. We've got continued no Şengün. We've got no Jabari Smith tonight. Cam Whitmore also missing. Tari Eason continues to be out. Jeff Green in recent run has been at 0.97, which is a massive step up from his 0.69. I didn't give him 0.97, but I gave him around 0.9. There's definitely downside to that play. It's not like we've got him at a runaway kind of a projection, but you could call that 24 minutes and 19 fantasy points, which would obviously not perform quite as well as that. I'm a little hesitant to get totally enthusiastic about the Jeff Green play, but it is price driven enough. It is cheap enough that it's functional on FanDuel. At 4,200, power forward and center on DraftKings, he came up playable, but nowhere near a priority. 6.83% winner and 6% of the top 150. Not a priority over there by a long stretch. Poku, looking all right on DraftKings. 3,900, 6.4% winner, 2.6% of the top 150. On FanDuel, didn't really come up. 4,500 on FanDuel. Tatum, this will maybe go up a little bit. I'll have to check the rates for Tatum. I've already got him at a pretty aggressive rate for this game. But we know we lost Derek White. Tatum over the last stretch has been 1.33, but that was with White in. I do think there's a little bit of bump with White out. I had him at 1.3, so at worst, maybe we take him to like 133, 135. It'll be a minor difference, but it would give him a little bit more life. He's at 5% across the board on FanDuel, 5% winner, but just 3% of the top 150 on DraftKings. At 10-1, 10,000, he's one of the easier stars to book at worst. I don't mind Tatum where he already was, and I think we'll see him go up a little bit if I reran the sim with new projections. You'd see him shoot up a little, and I think would look even better, even with increased public ownership. Because that's something important to consider that I don't talk about enough. Obviously when those plays change, in addition to the trajectory of the individual player that we're talking about's quality changing, the way that he bounces off the field changes because the field gets to him a lot more too. So that's where we'll see maybe his win rate goes way up, but where we are relative to the field maybe stays about the same. It's just the field has more, but so do we. So we end up at 15% instead of 5%, but the field instead of being at 12% ends up at 25%, right? I think you guys get that. Alex Caruso on FanDuel, 15% across the board, both guard spots for 6,000. Same price, shooting guard, small forward on DraftKings. Playable, but not all that relevant. 5% winner, just 2.6% of the top 150. KD, always playable. 12% winner, 7% of the top 150 on FanDuel. Again, 9,500 is the same price as Booker, different positioning on the FanDuel slate. A reasonable enough pivot for a little bit lower ownership, but we got to him a little bit less than the field. 9,300 on DraftKings, 3.4% winner, 2.6% of the top 150. You can take more shares of Kevin Durant on any given slate. I have no issues grabbing a few more, especially against San Antonio with no Wemby. We know there's true ceiling for Kevin Durant any given slate. 44.8 in 31 minutes the other day. It's just a question of how much does he really need to be out there grinding against this team when they're winning by 25 points in the third quarter. So there's a little of that going on, and then the three-headed monster there that they've got just kind of chews up two of those guys, and then one of them looks like a good play. Jay Sean, minimally playable on DraftKings, not really relevant on FanDuel. Sohan, same thing. Chris Murray, same thing. Davis Bertans, same thing. Miles Bridges, not really coming up on either site. Tosan. Not even going to try. Tosan. 4.8% winner, 7.3% of the top 150 for 4,100 small forward only. Plenty to do for him in Detroit. Again, Detroit very depleted, but I don't love the spot for them. Again, implied for well under 100 points going up against a very good defensive New York team, and not a high-end player to begin with. 0.62 per minute, 13% usage under normal situations for the season. 28.9 minutes the other night, put up just under 18 fantasy points. I don't want to get any kind of excitement going about Tosan here. He did come up a little bit ahead of that win rate. He is very cheap, and there's the idea of some time, but not a good spot, not a good player. In a small sample that I was able to create, he was at 0.85. And again, I've got him below that. I've got him like 0.77 for today. But that is well ahead of his small sample season long number. That 0.62 comes from 18 minutes a game over 11 games too. So it's like, what's the truth? Probably exactly where I've got him today, which was 0.77. KP probably gains a little bit of ground here. Not a ton. There's not going to be a huge direct rate impact for him. There's not going to be a time impact for him. Maybe a little tiny bit of an uptick for KP. He's always playable. 8,000 on FanDuel gets him into 5% of winners. 7,900 on DraftKings doesn't work nearly as well. 0.9% of winners and 0% on the top 150. So maybe less than playable on DraftKings. Call it, 1% across the board maybe now if we give him a little tiny bit of a nudge. Brandon Miller not showing us anything against Cleveland on either site. I like the player. I like the upside, but don't like that matchup against Cleveland. Don't love how he's bouncing off the public and the price. Nothing else to talk about on DK. Grady Dick, we touched on. That was bad. I heard it as it was coming out of what I was saying. But we move on. Grady, 7.2% winner, 5% of the top 150. Nobody's idea of a priority. Okoro going up against Charlotte at 4,700. A little bit of flexibility position-wise, 6% across the board. Minor play, moderately playable. Nowhere near a priority. On a shorter slate the other day, he was a little bit relevant. No differentiated guys further down the board, which is good because it's 5:47 and we still got centers to talk about. We got a few lineups that are no longer relevant to look at. See what you guys are chatting about in the... Yeah, I heard it too, Alan. I heard myself stumbling over that second line too. I tried to bail out of that second one. But yes. It's like that scene in Private Parts. Did you just say big cock coming out of my mouth? That sucks. Did you just say big cock coming out of my mouth? Such a good scene. I watched that entire movie the other day. It's been on HBO, I want to say. Such a good movie. Howard Stern, a surprisingly good actor. Granted, he's playing himself, but he was surprisingly good in that. They all were. It's amazing that I think there's more time now since that movie came out and Howard was like a big deal. There's more time between that and today than there was between that movie and the start of Howard Stern's career that they were depicting. I'm almost positive that's true. Podija and Stoner, they're remaking The Fall Guy. Yes, they are. It looks like they did it really, really like, big wink to the camera the whole way through. I'm kind of curious though, because it does seem like they did a lot of, real stunts for it. I'm always a big fan if you're doing stunts in camera rather than CGI. Speaking of which, oh my God, I tried to watch Expendables 4 the other day. Holy hell, was that bad. They're like, there's a scene where they're like, doing a raid on it's supposed to be like a big freighter ship at sea. As like, they come parachuting in and against like a shitty green screen that's just like, gray and blue background. They land on a ship and it's like, they walk into the hold and it's like, wow, that is quite clearly just made out of wood. That is a soundstage in front of a green screen. They're not even like, it's so bad. They cut away from like all the physical stuff. Like there's one, maybe two good like physical fight scenes. Just so bad. And the most predictable schlock of a screenplay in the history of movies. Awful. Not that any of the Expendables movies have been like award-winning, like great movies, but what was it? 2, I think, was actually a decent action movie. The first one was cheesy. 2 was a decent action movie, like throwback type. 3 was pretty bad. And then this one was just unwatchably bad. But yes, that was to make the point that I like when things are shot in the real world. I like when they do actual stunts in camera. I feel like we're getting back to that a little bit, especially with the disaster that the CGI and the look and feel of some of these Marvel movies that they've been shooting in the volume, that big surround CGI thing that they built in for Disney. That thing sucks. Shoot in the real world. Anyway, that's why the new indie movie was actually good. Say what you want about the new Indiana Jones last year, like with the plot, with the de-aging stuff, but so much of it was shot actually in the real world, actually doing stunts like a way that an indie movie should. They cheated on some of the Indiana Jones of it, where like, Harrison Ford running across the rooftop can't necessarily jump from rooftop to rooftop. So all of a sudden, like, you're down in the street and you see a little shadow jump across the buildings. You got to cheat when your lead star is 80 something years old. But I thought that one was kind of good for actually shooting in the real world. Let's see. We've talked about Chimezie Metu, Zach Collins, Trendon Watford. Jock Landale, I mentioned obliquely, pulling a 23.9% win rate and 51% of your top 150 on FanDuel. Holy hell, it's Jock Landale and Chimezie Metu day. Wow. On DraftKings, Landale is a $5,300 option, 21% of the top one of the winners, 41% of the top 150. You can align, if you are crazy enough to do so, Chimezie Metu, Zach Collins, and Jock Landale all in the same DraftKings lineup, given the power forward eligibility on Chimezie Metu. You could even go one better and put Trendon Watford into that lineup too. It's those guys and anything you want. I'm not advocating for actually building that lineup, but I'm kind of curious about what would be in it now. Jock just, going up against, especially if Portland's got no Ayton out there, just easy enough of a matchup. He's been a 0.95 per minute player over the course of this season. Got him at a reasonable... He's been at 1.15 in this no Şengün, no Jabari nebulous kind of environment that we've got today. I kind of went to that level. You could argue to take a few points off of him, but I think it's a good spot for Jock Landale here. So I kind of like that one. Another guy who's just been a really, really strong per minute performer, even in a not like critical plays 30 plus minutes role, Bruno Fernando. 1.10 for the season. Been, I think, a little better than that lately. We're back to the same situation. No Okongwu, no Jalen Johnson, no Sadiq Bey. Obviously, still no Trey. That's not a direct impact to Bruno. But Bruno's been playing at a 1.19 level over the last month and change. I've got him just in the 1-2 range. I've got him really close, actually, to his just true season-long number. Last time out, he played nearly 26 minutes, put up nearly 40 FanDuel points. For 4,800, you can absolutely sign me up for some shares of that. At 4,400 at center only on DraftKings, he's just kind of bouncing off the cheaper priced guys up here. If he was at the same price as some of these guys, he'd be a little bit more competitive. Right now, he's just drawing single-digit returns. But in a real sense, 4,400 for Bruno with 23 points projected and clear ceiling for more is not that functionally different than 4,100 for Chimezie Metu with a 24 projection. And I think a little less faith in the true ceiling, at least for me. So don't rule out Bruno Fernando just because of this. I think it is a little bit better. It's just how this and this bounce off of this guy. It takes some of the available shares away. Jokic lands as easily playable on FanDuel. Curious to see if we have any Jokic and Doncic lineups. 15% of the top 150, 9% of the winners. On DraftKings, 8%, 7% across the board. Get to more Nikola Jokic if you want to. Take as many shares as you like. It is that kind of a slate, and it's going to become more of that kind of a slate. That said, I do think Luka looked a little bit better on both sites in terms of the raw numbers for the two super high-priced stars. You also have to get Jokic, obviously, to play. He didn't play in the last game. He's questionable for tonight. Last game of the slate, and no spot to put that money in that game, right? Actually, wait. What do we have? Dallas and Utah. So I tell you what, you could reasonably, if you went with a guard and Jokic from those last two games, just leave a guard spot open, and roster Jokic. Or maybe you do it the other way around if you want to roster Luka and leave a center spot. But just leave yourself that flexibility if you're leaning Jokic because he is questionable. So you want to be able to pivot out of it. On FanDuel, you'll need an extra $800 to be able to get to Luka, so keep that in mind. On DraftKings, you need an extra $900 because Luka's 12-8 on both sides. So little bit of back and forth between those two guys with both their games going off at 9 o'clock. But that's how I would structure it. Like if you want to get to Jokic, just keep in mind you might have to be able to pivot off of it. And if you don't have two spots at least, you're not going to be able to spend that money appropriately. On DraftKings, you do have the util spot, obviously. So if you put Jokic in and you left yourself $900 on the table and only the util spot, then you could get to Luka. But I think that illustrates what I'm trying to say. And obviously then if you did have Jokic play, that $900 would go to waste. Richaun Holmes doesn't look all that good on FanDuel. 5,900, didn't hit the board at all, but at 4,800 on DraftKings, 12% winner, 10% of our top 150. Can definitely grab some of that. 0.92 per minute over the course of the season. Know everybody for Washington, so plenty of upside. He's been playing reasonably around 28 minutes, played 28-2 the other night, put up 35 FanDuel points, got him right back at 28 minutes tonight. Like the upside there for the cheap DraftKings price. Again, on FanDuel, not there at all. Kelly O, we talked about. Lando, we talked about. Nick Claxton, 11%, 13% on FanDuel. 7.8%, and we got to him 21% of the time on DraftKings. That's interesting. We're about double the field on Claxton on DraftKings. What concerns me is the field's ownership is ahead of our win rate there. I'm not entirely sure. It might just be a raw projection thing with like some of those cheaper guys going into the center spot or like some maybe the power forward eligible guys drop into the forward lineups in Claxton lineups. I'm not really totally sure why he came up that strong on DraftKings in terms of our top 150 exposure. But we are double the field, so it could just be working, the way it works against the public ownership. Somebody keep in mind a reasonably good per minute performer going up against a nothing front court in Toronto right now outside of Kelly O, and that's no real threat. Isaiah Hartenstein going up against Detroit with their depleted front court. 7% winner on DraftKings, 11% of the top 150. Didn't hit the board at all because he's still 7,400 on FanDuel. Doesn't really click with just 26 minutes a night. But that said, he's got upside to 45 points in 26 minutes like he did in their last game. Fantastic rebounder when he had some scoring or some stocks or whatever. The numbers can go up pretty aggressively. So I like Hartenstein here. Significantly better on DraftKings. There's maybe a little smidge of playability even despite the sim results, but he's very expensive for the potential returns on FanDuel. Jeff Green we talked about. I don't want to talk about it again because I'm not at all comfortable recommending it. Danny Gafford's been a point per minute monster basically all season at 1.23, but especially with Dallas. I don't dislike that spot. There's a little bit more raw upside there maybe than low single digits on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you got to him in 6% of winners and 12% of the top 150. So a little juice against the public for him. DeAndre Ayton, if he plays, looks fairly playable on FanDuel at 82, but I kind of like some of these cheaper guys better. I think if I'm at the point where I'm going like, all right, I'll leave Nikola Jokic on the board. I'm not going to grab like Olynyk or one of the. I think I just default to let me grab a Cheryl Landale for 55 rather than going to DeAndre Ayton. As good as Ayton's been lately, I think I'd rather just get cheap and use that money on a true star. On DraftKings, Ayton just 5%, 2%. Not that relevant. Jared Allen, 1.17 per minute. Put up just 16.3 in a 22-minute effort the other night. Didn't get a chance to look at what happened there. 14.3% winner, though, on FanDuel. 8% of the top 150 on DraftKings. Just 4% and 2%. Check that FanDuel ownership real quick. It puts us, the win rate is kind of around the field. Field's a little bit behind that, but we're below the field. If you want to go up to like 10%, grab a few more shares, it's all right on FanDuel. Wiseman should be booking another start for Detroit. That said, doesn't look all that relevant on FanDuel. Doesn't look all that relevant on DK. 5,700 on DK, 6,600 on FanDuel. Didn't hit the board really at all. Kristaps, again, there'll be a slight, tiny little bit more for Kristaps, maybe. And nobody else, really. Nobody differentiated. Vooch is just a 1%er. PJ, same thing. I think that's all the relevant options. Dom Barlow in 18 minutes at 3,900 didn't really hit the board. 3,700 on DraftKings got him 2% there, but not really strong. Capella, his usual 26 minutes, didn't register on either site. Nurk. It's a good spot for Nurk. Wouldn't totally shock me if Nurk had one of those big ceiling Nurk days. Got him projected, I think, fairly strongly. 28-minute night, 35 FanDuel points, 36 DraftKings points for 72. Didn't sim out great, but if we're looking for true ceiling centers in that matchup, I don't hate that. Just as like an off-the-board guy, especially if he cracks 30 minutes. That said, just 22 minutes played the other day. Did put up 31.5 to illustrate the per-minute upside, though. I think that's it, gang. Hour 45 in. I'll pull up Ace Mine. We'll take a quick look. But again, these are going to be less relevant than they were earlier. Start with your DK. I did it against the cheap 50K to first tournament that they've got. Grab a nice 59,000 entry field here to work with. All right, what do we got? So, yeah, Claxton ended up in some of these top lineups, and it is kind of like what I was saying. Like, I went to a cheap Landell and put him at the util, got Metu at the power forward, and then went to Claxton just on the, got to spend some money, and he had a decent raw projection at the position. It's interesting how that worked out. A lot of Freddie Van Vliet, or at least some. Some Jordan Poole makes me uncomfortable. Cam Thomas, scoring dependent, man. Getting a lot of Cam Thomas and Jordan Poole into a lot of lineups is an effort for a path to disaster on a lot of slates. All right, good boy. Can you go lie down, please? Joker's like right over here. A lot of Cam Thomas, though. A lot of Jordan Poole. Misich, I don't remember talking about. He hit the board a few times. Malachi Flynn, no real faith in that. Deuce getting on the board a little bit, but again, it's just, totally minutes based. But he's getting there a little. So it looks like reasonable mid-range spend, but you could obviously go cheap at the point. But it seems like more of these are in the mid to mid-high, like Freddie Van Vliet, Jalen Brunson level obviously is expensive. Scoot is in like that mid-range. Derek White, obviously not on the board anymore. Karis LeVert from the mid. Or you could go a little cheaper with like a Deuce. There's a Bradley Beal pivot that we were talking about. Freeman Liberty, I believe, has point guard eligibility here too. So I'm surprised we didn't see it. There he is. We didn't see much of him in the point guard spot, but we did get him in shooting guard a little bit. A lot of shooting guard going to Jordan Poole. Some of it going to Cam Thomas. Otherwise, you're going, Sasser, Freeman Liberty level. Oh, there's a Jalen Green who snuck in there. But it looks like you're taking another mid position with two of these fairly obvious Poole and Thomas guys, or you get a little bit cheap at the shooting guard. Metu at power forward with some Jeff Green, some Trendon Watford creeping in around the edges, but primarily looking like Metu's spot, or at least savings oriented, I think is safe to say at power forward. Between the Metus, the Igbajis, the Dorian Finney-Smith even. He's like mid-range, but Trent Watford, Jeff Green, fairly savings-oriented at the power forward spot. Looks reasonably spendy at small forward. Some Josh Hart in there from the mid. Amen Thompson, Dante DiVincenzo, Danny, even Keldon. It's like mid, MPJ. Actual center, Claxton Collins, but that's with a Metu here and a Landale here. So we are getting like three of those top power forward center guys on that DraftKings board. Spendy at guard, but obviously you could put it over here. It just depends, back and forth what you did here. You'd do the opposite over here. Same thing with forward. Fair amount of Keldon coming up. But again, with where we didn't use here or here that looked good, you were getting over here. And then the util does look like it's a little bit flexible. Obviously, you got some Landales in there, a couple savings-oriented spots, but primarily it does look like you got money to spend at Util today. You got some Jokic, some Van Vliet, Collins from the mid, Poole from the mid. Gafford is, mid-level. Jalen Green. The one I'm not seeing a lot of is Luka. Oh, there he is. Definitely not seeing Luka and Jokic, which I'm not surprised by. That's very difficult to get to. We don't have that value on this slate yet. That's your DraftKings board. It's pretty ugly. That top lineup was bringing you back against your 4, bringing back $90 against your 4 with a 0.1% win probability, 23% cash. Top lineup on the board was Freddie Van Vliet, Marcus Sasser, Josh Hart, Chimezi Metu, Nick Claxton, Jamal Murray, Keldon Johnson, and Jock Landale. Nobody's idea of a good lineup. But there it is, and it performed. You get a little bit more Starsy with some of these. I do not like this slate, Sam. I am. David Soto, this is courtesy of acemind.io. So this is running my projections in the sim environment, creates a pool of 59,000 lineups, bounces them off one another 50,000 times, and then we get our results. That's what we were talking about through the show, right? The results have been these win probabilities. So the amount of time that player across 50,000 sims appears in the winning lineup, and then our top 150 lineups, the best performing 150 lineups out of the 59,000 whatever entries across the 50,000 sims. How many times was this guy in those top 150 performing lineups? So those are the numbers we were talking about during the show. They've got a simulator, PGA, college basketball, NBA, MMA, NFL when that's in season. MLB is going to be right up at the top here by the end of this week, I'm sure. They've also got optimizers for all those sports. It's a great site. They are significantly less expensive and significantly more responsive to customer issues than the competition. Highly recommend. FanDuel. Freddie Van Vliet, Luka dominating the point guard spot in the top couple lineups. Looking strongly like you want one of Luka Doncic or Freddie Van Vliet, if not both, in your point guard spot. A lot of those are going one of those guys and then a cheapo. Luka, Javon Freeman, Liberty, Freddie Van Vliet, and Misic. You do have a Van Vliet and Murray there, a Van Vliet and Scoot, a Luka and Van Vliet. I like the Luka Van Vliet combo. But it looks like we're fairly spendy at point guard across both on FanDuel. Fair amount of Jordan Poole mixed with some Devin Vassell, a little bit of a Baji in there, some Devo making the board there, but probably a Poole Vassell here and then a cheapo. And not even, because we got some Bogdan, we got some Beal there. Small forward, we definitely get some cheap guys. Popping with some Jeff Green in there. A lot of Jeff Green. Overall, there's a fair amount of balance. So until we get, to the power forward spot and the center spot. So FanDuel, you're gearing up on cheap big men. Metu, Fernando, and Landale in that top lineup. Metu AG, Metu, Kelly O, fine. Got Jokic in that one with Kelly O. That combo I don't dislike. Metu, Kelly O, Jokic. Stretch it out to Cam Thomas. You've got Jeff Green and Agbaji. Neither one of those guys is overly comfortable, but you get back to Jordan Poole, who not at all comfortable with, but has been playing well. Van Vliet and then Misic. I think it crumbles a little bit. I like the back end of it better than I like some of that. This is one where I'd maybe take this sim result if I'm building one lineup, which is the case lately. Take this sim result and then maybe I click around, try and change some of that up, use some players from other spots. And that's when you can I've got that lineup in, and now let me pull up the data. Let me look at the win rates. And can I get, instead of somebody that was in that lineup, instead of Misic, what can I do to get myself to Jordan Poole? What can I do to get myself, and just start making alternative clicks and see if you can get the lineup back. Maybe I pivot it down to Javon Freeman Liberty, see what that gains me in a lineup. So that's what I like doing when I'm building just few lineups with the Sims. But yeah, looks like we went pretty cheap for most of these in the big man spots. And then you've got at least balance across the rest of the lineups. Top performing FanDuel lineup had Metu, Bruno Fernando, Jock Landale on the back end. Front end of that, though, was Freddie VanVleet with Luka Doncic, Jordan Poole, who looks very good today, Agbaji, who, again, not a comfortable play, but looks really good. Keldon looks really good. No Wemby, some support for the upside for him. Cam Thomas, totally scoring dependent. So, like, yeah, there's some shaky, easy to fail across these four guys. But there's support today for them being four good plays. Obviously, no issue with Freddie VanVleet, Luka Doncic. And then all three of these guys have reasonable expectation for success today. So I kind of like that top lineup. No issues with it anyway. Bring you back 44 against your $5. This is against the $5 entry 21,000 lineup contest on FanDuel. So bringing you back 44 with a nearly 0.2% win rate. 42% cash rate for that top lineup, if you're just looking at cash. So again, that one was Freddie, Luka, Jordan Poole, Agbaji, Keldon Johnson, Cam Thomas, Metu, Bruno, and Jock Landale. Plenty of spots to pivot in that one, too. You could obviously just grab the big meatball there. That is not a comment about Luka's weight, just the price tag. But maybe you pivot Luka down. Not that that's the guy I would go to, but I'm just the example being that every other choice in that spot automatically creates like 2,000 of spend at a minimum across the rest of these spots. That's the easiest, quickest way to get very different from what this lineup resulted in, but it also knocks it way, way down. I would maybe start with Jordan Poole. See if I knock this down price-wise, can I upgrade this? Get me to two guys I like better here, or same story, Keldon and Agbaji. If I knock this down to a cheaper guy, maybe there's a little bit of upside that I like better. What does it help me upgrade in that spot? So just a lot to be done with these, but you can see lots of Freddie, lots of Luka in those top lineups. White is obviously no longer available. Got some Beal in there. This one's got Freddie VanVleet, Jamal Murray, Devin Vassell, Agbaji, Okoro, Kevin Durant, Metu, Kelly O, Jock Landale. I don't dislike that one that I just happened to land on there. Also leaves $300 on the table, so you got a couple bucks to spend. If you want to get like an Agbaji out of there, you got a little bit of money left in that one. A lot of same across the value positions here. A lot of quote-unquote good chalk right now on the FanDuel slate, and then it's just a matter of landing on the right couple mid-range guys, like the right two mid-range guys and the right 2 or 3 stars. But there's a lot feeding the beast on FanDuel today. Anyway, gang, coming up on 6:15, got some projections updates to make, and I'm sure they'll be scrambling for some other ones, so let me get out of here. Update will probably be in 6:30-ish. With that in mind, good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. Back same time tomorrow, and we are ready for baseball, as Cujo says. Baseball coming on Thursday. We'll have projections up before that for baseball. Be doing a show. I'll try and announce all that tomorrow. I'll try and figure it out, but it'll probably be Thursday. That's it, guys. I will see you tomorrow. Adios.